just to finish up with like the health field before we move into our directors here, I'd like to ask, because I like how we went to Ken, who's 99% of these people will be nurses and only 1% will be doing something else, to Jambi, who's doing physician assistant, to having a healthcare auditor. Now we have like a healthcare administrator here. And I just wanted to hear Nkatha's, like, if you can just tell us what exactly, I know, do people understand what senior consultancy is? How did you even get there? And what is your field about and what do you do exactly?
Okay, well, you know, I would say like my story is not as glamorous as theirs is. Like, oh, mine actually just so happened to be the right time, the right place, but it's called led by the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, that is, which I believe in God a lot. I just let Him guide me. But I would say I did get a lot of good mentoring along the way. So I started it started 7 years ago, which is also how I met my husband. So, you know, most people know me, you know, Jambi and I and everybody here, we've been hanging out for many years. Because, you know, there was a different culture in Kenya at that time. Like, every time we go to America, we were more concerned about going out and partying and all that. But then it got to a point, I was like, oh, hold up. You know, this is not what I'm trying to do the rest of my life. You know, I got to really get serious. So I was in Loma Linda University pursuing public health at that time. And then I met my husband. And so, you know, we were introduced through somebody. And then, you know, at that time, I was still working at Kaiser Permanente. And, you know, most people at that time, I remember in the Kenyan community, were either in nursing, some were doing security, others were, you know, just kind of like trying to get by. And then we had a lot of real estate agents. I remember like probably 90% of the whole community was a real estate agent. I mean, everybody was driving Mercedes and all that stuff, and I was pushing I don't even know what car I was pushing. But he got me to point A to point B, you know, I'm not mad at that. But anyway, so when I met him, you know, he was like an interesting, him and I only 1 year apart. He said earlier he was 35, so I guess, you know, I could tell my age. I'm 33, you know, but I'm going to turn 34 this year, so I'm not trying to age myself yet. But anyway, so I remember at that time, I mean, he was really mature. I was like, who are you? Like, where'd you come from? Like, what are you talking about? I mean, he was so mature and his head was so level, and it was so different from everybody else that, you know, I had dated before. And then, you know, he just started talking to me about all these things, and then I asked him what he does, and he told me he was doing, you know, programming and all. I was like, oh. So then he went to asking questions. I was like, oh, what do you mean programming? You know, and I'm nosy, but that was actually being good, nosy in a good way. Because it got me a career out of it and a husband out of it, so it's all good.
You can get those two. You can have everything, ladies. Yeah. So, but you have to really be interested in their career. Don't just get a man through that way. Yeah.
And
anyway,
so,
sorry.
You know, the minute him and I started talking, we actually thought like we had a lot in common, because even though I was in the call center, I was really into strategic planning. And so I created this whole strategic plan for how the call center could improve the operations, and I knew I wanted to move on to something else, but I just didn't know how to jump over to the next step. So anyway, so he helped me with my resume, and then he helped me, you know, with the interview questions and whatnot. And then for a couple of months, I remember probably a year or so, he, you know, we just started doing programming here and there. He gave me a book that he started like, you know, just here and there. At that time, I didn't really understand it, but I was like, you know, it seems interesting because you're creating something.
But what exactly do you mean by programming? Because we know
coding.
like coding?
Right.
So you know HTML code?
Well, so, you know, that's what's different, because most people, when they think of coding, they think of
web making.
Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't putting
like
my mic
web
over here.
making, right?
Right, they think about just creating websites, but there's actually another side of coding. It's basically where a system is already been created, but you're writing codes to extract that data from that system.
So this has to do with data.
It has to do with data, but you still have to write a code in order to get that data out.
Okay, and so you don't have to go to school to learn how to do what you're doing.
That's what I'm getting to.
Okay, then.
You know, so anyway, so I was doing public health in Loma Linda, and then, you know, eventually, I remember that probably a year and a half later, I then got a project analyst position, still at Kaiser Permanente, and then that's when I got a really good mentor who was my manager, but also was a programmer. So he helped me a lot. I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting, and I learned, like, I mean, day and night, I was just studying this thing. I was like, this is so interesting. I can't believe like all this information we're entering here. I could write this code, like, do all this. It was just so interesting to me. And I just started reading about it and reading about it. And then eventually I became really good at it. I actually almost got much better than he was, but he's still really good. I don't want to take all the credit. But anyway, so then I did that for about 3 years. And then I decided I want to move on to the big city, move on to big things. I was just here in Fontana. I was like, man, I'm about to move up, But then anyway, so then I went to LA and I saw a great opportunity there. And sometimes you might think that you're in the IE and there's not much going on, not knowing that you actually have a lot of opportunities in here, because the opportunities I got were from the IE. But then when I went to LA thinking I'll then advance my skills, little did I know that from that area where I was working at, people didn't even, everything was so manual and labor intensive. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to make it easier for them to be able to do their job. So I just went in there and used the what I say, informatics and analytics to help, cut like the process cycle. Like for, if you used to take them like an hour, not an hour, but a day to, to extract, put together a report. I'll do some, try to automate the whole process, so they'll just probably do a few clicks and it'll take probably about an hour or less. So, just helping with stuff like that. And then I also developed a lot of interest in operations management. So with operations management, I started to think about, like helping with the clinic throughput, like helping members get their appointment sooner. Because like he said, somebody here said he's an auditor. I know he audits our place really closely. So anyway,
You're not supposed to say that.
I know. But, they developed the standards. Well, the standards actually come from, first the government, and then they go to the federal committee or CMI sometimes, and then they go to the state level, and then from the state level, then we have to basically work with them and make sure that we have to meet these standards. Like, if somebody asks for a consult appointment, you can't give them like 50 days later. You gotta get them in within 2 weeks or less, sometimes actually 7 days, because the competition is really tight. So I got a lot of interest in that, and just helping people like with the, all this volume of members that are coming through. Because like you said, sometimes when people, think about it, when you're really rich, you eat a lot, because, and then you get fat, and then you get sick, or something else. And then when you're really poor, and things are not going so well, then sometimes you end up being depressed. Or sometimes you could be really rich and depressed or something like that. But anyway, one way or another, you still find yourself in the hospital.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Unfortunately. And so, it just keeps our business going, right? But then at the same time, we want to keep people healthy. That's why people like Ken come along. Because like, they go to Jambi, and then Jambi tells them, well, you got to work out. And then they go to Ken, and then they're like, maybe if I work out, I'll do better. But then, the whole time, he's auditing people there, but I'm extracting that data. So the data that he audits is what I'm pulling, just to kind of put it all in context. Right, because we started there and then, okay. So anyway, so after that, so then I decided, I've been in medical operations for so long, I wanted to pursue something different, because I knew there was need to help just improve workflows within the hospital, but I didn't know how to build influence because I haven't had much exposure. So I decided to go to a corporate office, and that's where I got into consulting. So I've learned a lot over there, because there's a lot of information that comes through, and there's a lot of studying still. If you think like you're going to, graduate high school and that's about it, you won't need to study anymore, wrong. Yeah. Studying continues for the rest of your life. Right. I mean, you got to just keep reading and reading. You might want to, instead of like catching up with love and hip hop every whatever day it comes on, you might want to just keep that book on you, you know what I mean? Because trust me, those love and hip hop people don't even care, and they don't know you. No. You'll never make it over there. You'll be much better than them. They're just putting a facade for you to look up to, but trust me, you need to like really pursue what God has planned for you and talk to him first, and he'll lead you in the right place. But you just gotta take the steps. So I decided to go in them, because I always have an interest in helping people. So I decided to, go into medical and really learn the business. So health plan operations, helping with membership. In terms of membership, what I do is like project membership, right? Because sometimes, like there's some policies that are being passed through, or some state regulations that are coming through. Like, for example, Obamacare led into Care Coordinator Initiative, and then we had all these people that had to, and basically they lowered I would say they increased the income level for medical. So a lot of people who might not have otherwise qualified for medical could now qualify. And if they had Kaiser before, then they remain with Kaiser. So, we had all these members, even though we were not open for people, but, we had all these people, register for Kaiser and had to give the medical centers projections. So we have to tell the medical centers, what to expect, right? In order for them to plan, like how are we going to handle all this incoming volume. So that's pretty much what I do. So I model the membership information, and then I also, basically just work through what my manager wants. Because, sometimes kind of like you also have to be really careful, because when you move up to a certain level and you're not really the CEO yet, or the vice president yet, or the executive yet, or I swear there's like 20 million levels before you get to where you are. Right. But sometimes you have to be really careful, because you might kind of hit a stalemate, because where I am, even though I'm getting all this information, I'm not like an active participant in the decision making. And so if you want to be that active participant in the decision making, sometimes you have to step back a little bit, gain that experience somewhere else, and then just keep moving up back later.
Okay.
So that's where I am. I'm sorry.
All right. So that's consultancy right there. So there's like different types of consultancy, right?
Yes.
Because so now you deal with data, you deal with numbers and programming and all that stuff.
I would say that's not what I intended my career to be into reporting, but there is a need for people who have that skill set. So even though I was hired there to be a senior consultant instead of strategic planning for the medical population, I still ended up like, oh, you could do what now? And so instead of them having to go through some other people to get that information, it just defaulted for me doing that work.
So now that programming, is it something that someone can learn in the internet and just go?
Yes. You know what?
Okay.
And, I say all that to say, because even though my undergraduate is in,
public health. Oh.
Well, actually, I changed that after I met Mo, and I decided that's not what I wanted to do.
There you go.
It's in healthcare administration.
Okay.
And also, I have another one from organization leadership, and then I'm also now getting into engineering, which,
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah.
None of that actually I learned in school. That's the whole that's the whole idea. Like sometimes you might think like the school will make out to be a genius. No. Trust me, school is just to show how disciplined you are, and it just helps you to, like wire your brain to know how to think and to challenge yourself, and to get you out of the norm, and just to think outside the box. But skill set comes from within, right? Because you might think you're doing this, but you might end up, doing something
else.
Yeah, totally.
And actually, you pointed something that I know we're running late on time, but like, if you can just allow us to just continue with this panel, because I think like every panelist here has like a brilliant thing, and I'm gonna go to the next two panelists. But you pointed something out that reminded me of like Dr. Muteti and what he said, and so like that asking questions, and that education is not necessarily, even if you don't get into a dream school, he was telling us that like you can ask yourself, how can I change my career plans, right? So education is only a tool to get you to where you want to go, right? And if you don't know where you're gonna go, that's okay. Usually after you graduate from high school and you go to college, you take general education classes, and that's what Mr. Nkatha was saying. And in general education classes, you take different disciplines, and you can actually get to like a sense of which like discipline you like, and you can actually end up majoring in that.